This one is dark, y'all. Atlantis The Lost Empire is a 2001 Disney movie directed by Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise, the same duo that directed Beauty and the Beast and The Hunchback of Notre Dame during the Renaissance. Atlantis would be their third and final film, as of 2024, for Disney, and creates what I see as a fascinating trilogy for the directing team. Starting off strong with Beauty and the Beast, which was the first animated movie to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, it was clear that these two wanted to bring more adult stories to Disney. The Hunchback of Notre Dame contains some of the darkest material I've ever seen in a Disney film, and one of the most horrifying villains ever put to screen there. But it's also a musical and packed to the brim with comedic side characters, cute animals, and slapstick humor that really gives you a lot of tonal whiplash. But with Atlantis, they said, screw it. No more singing teapots, no cute sidekicks, no happy-go-lucky nonsense. Just death, destruction, more death, attempted genocide, imperialism and capitalism critique for good measure, and more death again. And you know, I kind of love it. This movie is such a radical departure for the Disney company from what they usually made. Especially coming out when it did, right after the Renaissance had ended. I honestly have no idea how this got past the mouse. So production started in 1996, right after this team had finished Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it seems like they liked working together and they wanted to keep the team together, but they wanted to push Disney in a new direction. By their own words, they wanted less Fantasyland and more Adventureland. So they wanted to push us in that direction away from the fairy tales that had made Disney famous. They wanted this movie to be something Disney had never done before. They even wore shirts as a crew that said Atlantis. Fewer songs, more explosions. Like, they were fully committed on making this a huge departure from what the studio usually makes, and I want to give a little insight into how committed the team was to bring that vision to life. They wanted a brand new animation style, and they were going to be using a groundbreaking mix of 2D hand-drawn animation and 3D computer animation, more than had ever been used in any other Disney film. To create the look of the film, they were really inspired by the work of Mike Mignola, who was the creator of Hellboy, the comic series, and they brought him on as a production designer. So Mignola created character sketches, style guides, background design, story ideas, and Trousdale and Wise even had classes for all their animators to learn how to emulate Mignola's work and his style. And even if you're not familiar with Mignola's work, you can immediately tell that Atlantis just looks different to any of the other Disney movies that had come out before it. It is striking, it is gorgeous, it's very jagged and blocky, but also flows so well together. And the blend of hand-drawn animation and computer works so well in so many of these big set pieces that they make. It lets the movie have some incredible moving images, like this one pan of the submarine as we're outside in the ocean, and we get to see the entire exterior as we go up around the window and we see Milo watching outside and we see the top of the submarine. It's just a grand scale vision for what this movie was going to look like. They also wanted to animate the film in CinemaScope in a wider format to bring to mind a lot of the movies and adventure films that inspired it, like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, if you don't know what that means, CinemaScope, in basic terms, is they just widen the image that would be displayed on screen. So if a normal size of the screen for a Disney movie is this, then CinemaScope is this. You can see there's a lot more animation to fill in, and it meant changing up how these movies were animated. They could get new desks and material and paper to start animating on these larger screens, or they could modify what they already had and scale down their artwork on their pieces of paper so that when blown up, it would go to the right aspect ratio. And of course, this is what they ended up doing. The result of this, as you can see in the final movie, is some of the most gorgeous scenery and panoramic shots that we've ever seen in a Disney movie. This final shot where they pan out from Milo and Kida was called The Most Difficult in Disney Animation History by Trousdale and Wise, as it starts out on essentially one piece of paper and pans out to the equivalent of over 1,000 times that paper's initial size. The scale they were going for was huge. Oh, and that's not all. We are dealing with an ancient and advanced civilization here, so what language are they going to speak in? They can't just speak in English. I mean, it does end up being English, but let's ignore that for a second. The filmmakers brought in Mark Okrand, who made up the original Klingon language for Star Trek, to develop a brand new language for the Atlanteans to speak. On the DVD extras, there's actually a fun little special feature where Okrand will teach you how to say some phrases in native Atlantean.
Goodbye. Gamok. Gamok. The word for yes. Teague. Teague. And the word for no. Quam. Quam. Good, yeah, that's it.
All the written language in the film, all those runes, you can actually read them. And here's a neat fact. That language is written in... Okay, oh, here we go. I have to read this. Boustrafidon. Boustrafidon? Boustrafidon? This word, style. Which means that the lines alternate between being read left to right and right to left. So on the first line, you read it left to right, then you drop down to the next line and read it right to left, then down and left to right, and you read it like this over and over again. And this gave the language a sense of flow like water, which is why it was chosen for the Atlantean language. Isn't that cool? So we have a completely new and distinct animation style. We're using new emerging technologies, a brand new language created specifically for this film, and a story that combines adventure movies, the work of Jules Verne, and different cultural elements from ancient civilizations around the world. I don't think I've seen a Disney movie as ambitious and grand as this one in terms of what it was trying to accomplish. So I guess the big question is, did it work? Atlantis The Lost Empire begins with an intense prologue. The thriving civilization of Atlantis is struck by a cataclysmic disaster. A tidal wave powered by a mysterious energy source engulfs the city, and we see the Atlantean energy source call up Kida's mother and protect the people by submerging the city beneath the ocean. Fast forward thousands of years, and the legend of Atlantis is little more than a myth. Enter Milo Thatch, an underappreciated linguist and cartographer stuck in a dead-end museum job, obsessed with proving Atlantis is real. After being mocked and denied by the museum staff, Milo's luck changes when eccentric millionaire Preston Whitmore, who was a friend of Milo's grandfather, funds an expedition to find the lost city, handing Milo the missing piece of the Atlantis puzzle, the Shepherd's Journal, an ancient guide to Atlantis. A lot of things happen, which we'll discuss in more detail soon, but for now, just know that they go on this expedition to find Atlantis, and eventually, they find Atlantis. Yay! Before we dive into this wacky cast of characters, I just want to commend this movie on its first act because it's one of my favorite in any Disney movie that I've seen. It's incredibly fast-paced and wastes zero time in getting us going. By the 20-minute mark in this movie, we have already been introduced to Atlantis and seen it get destroyed and buried under the sea, as well as been introduced to our heroine Kida and her personal tragic backstory with her mom, been introduced to Milo Thatch, the Shepherd's Journal, his grandfather's passion in life, his dreams of finding Atlantis, and the mockery and obstacles keeping him from achieving that dream. We've met Helga, Professor Whitmore, found the Shepherd's Journal, and been given an explanation for an already prepared expedition. We've had individual moments with every single crew member of importance on the submarine, and we've begun the journey as we head into the first big action set piece. This is a massive amount of exposition to get, and not only do we get it all in such a short amount of time, but the movie also doesn't feel too rushed while doing it. And each of these pieces of exposition is important because, as we will soon learn, the strength of this movie lies in each of these characters and their relationship with each other. So it's important that we get to know them. So let's get to know them. Milo Thatch is our protagonist, a nerdy linguist who was raised by his equally nerdy grandfather that instilled into him an obsession with the legend of Atlantis. Grandpa dedicated his life to finding Atlantis, and Milo is following in his footsteps. He's also voiced by Michael J. Fox in a terrifically hyperactive performance that really fits the fast pace this movie kicks us off with. Milo has a good heart and wants to find Atlantis for purely academic purposes. He is our Indiana Jones and a lovable guide to get us to Atlantis. Helga Sinclair is the first other major character we meet, and I think she's one of my favorite characters in the movie. Anyone who stands like this is immediately going to be a favorite of mine. She is introduced in this incredible nighttime scene, minces no words through the entire movie, is a villain but shows hesitation and depth, and when she is betrayed by Rourke, she uses her last action to be the one that takes Rourke out. Whitmore is our eccentric billionaire who knew Milo's grandfather, and due to a bet he made when Milo's grandpa was alive, he agrees to fund the expedition to Atlantis. All three of these characters have distinct personalities, but I just want to point out how rapid fire all this dialogue and speech patterns of these three are.
Dear Mr. Thatch, due to your absence, the board has voted to reject your proposal. You will address him as Mr. Whitmore or Sir. You will stand unless asked to be seated.
I said, Thatch, if you ever actually find that so-called journal, not only will I finance the expedition, but I'll kiss you full on the mouth.
I just think it adds a lot to the movie that we are getting so much information so quickly, and the fast, rapid pace that these characters are talking really mirrors the fast pace the story is being delivered to us in the first act of the film. So I commend them for committing to that. We then go to the submarine and get to meet our eclectic crew. Audrey is our mechanic, a young, tough, and no-nonsense person whose father wanted sons and is driven by a desire to prove herself. Vinny is our explosives expert. Sarcastic and quirky, he's voiced by Don Novello, and his deadpan delivery of his quick one-liners provide the funniest bits in the movie. Sweet is our medic on board, and behind this massive, strong build lies the fast-talking sweetheart of the group. In the third act, where it is revealed that this crew are all actually the villains of the piece, Sweet is the first to break off from their ranks and help the Atlanteans. Cookie and Packard are our chef and communications expert, bringing some great humor to the movie, and also the final performance of Jim Varney, rest in peace. Mole is our digging expert, and I gotta say, this is the only character in the movie that doesn't really work for me. Some jokes about him land.
What's Mole's story?
Trust me on this one. You don't want to know. Audrey, don't tell him. You shouldn't have told me, but you did. And now I'm telling you, you don't want to know.
But as a whole, for me, I think the character is a little too out there, and his humor doesn't really hit. For how grounded this movie is, even with all the magic and energy Atlantean stuff, he just really sticks out like a sore thumb, and he stands out as the weakest part of the crew and the movie for me. Finally, we have Rourke, the leader of this expedition. He is large and intimidating, never funny, and by the end of the movie, a very real and credible threat to all our characters. So I've noticed that in their 3 movies, Trousdale and Wise have a knack for finding the villainy in real humans. Gaston, he's just the town jock that everyone loves, taken to his villainous extremes. Frollo is a religious zealot who uses his power and influence for the most nefarious purposes. And Rourke may be the most realistic and grounded of them all. He's a man just out to make a lot of money, and he doesn't care who or what gets in the way of that. He may not be as terrifying or as deep as Frollo. You know, having one of the best Disney villain songs of all time really helps get to the heart of a character there. But Rourke is certainly a worthy member of this villains club, and his cold and callous response to the potential loss of every life of the citizens of Atlantis is haunting. And how realistic and grounded he's portrayed really lays on the anti-capitalistic and imperialistic message that this movie is trying to send. Yes, there are many people like Rourke in our past and in our present. And yes, this is exactly what they act like in real life. And yes, they are villains. There isn't anything cartoonish about the way Rourke acts or talks. He's just a carbon copy of what this person is like in real life. And for the more mature story that they're trying to tell in Atlantis, it works wonders. It also isn't a cheap surprise or twist that he and the crew are secretly evil. We get many glimpses to his true nature throughout the film, but even as soon as we get to Atlantis, we get this line.
Commander, there were not supposed to be people down here. This changes everything.
This changes nothing.
And that's a little under halfway through the movie. We know he's evil, and his ramp up in the climax is still effective and chilling. James Garner delivers a fantastic performance as Rourke, and he's not talked about enough as a villain. Also, while Gaston and Frollo both get falling into the abyss, or hell, deaths, Rourke might get the worst one of all. He gets turned into this crystallized blue monster that he's clearly in pain in, and then gets obliterated into pieces by these spinning rotor blades. It's brutal. It's a good death. All of these characters get moments with Milo and with each other to really build their relationship. Even in this fast-paced first half with all the set pieces we have to move through, we get to have slower scenes of them all just having dinner together and imparting life stories. They may not be revolutionary background stories or break down the human condition, but this is still a 90-minute Disney movie, and the fact that we took the time to give these archetypal characters a moment is noteworthy, and it makes their eventual betrayal of Rourke and standing with Milo and the Atlanteans all the more powerful. I know that a lot of people complain about the characters in Atlantis being flat and one-dimensional, but I have to say I disagree. I know more about Audrey and Vinny than I do about, say, Cogsworth and Flounder, and those characters are beloved. I love the characters in Atlantis, and I love that they get these moments throughout the film. And this brings me to our final character, Kida. Princess Kida of Atlantis. And I saved her for last because, honestly, once we finally reach Atlantis and meet Kida, that's when the movie starts to fall apart a little bit. Kida is the daughter of the king of Atlantis, and she's also the little girl we saw in the prologue who lost her mother to the big energy crystal, revealing that she is over 8,000 years old. She is vivacious, strong, cares about her civilization, and is motivated by that care, making her a rare heroine in the Disney canon, as her motivation has nothing to do with love or a man. While she does presumably end up in a relationship with Milo, her feelings to him are not romantic through the movie, and are driven from a sense of learning and wanting to learn more about her civilization. She is strong-willed and ready to fight for herself when the situation calls for it, and that all sounds pretty amazing, and it is. However, the other half of Kida does not fare as well. For being 8,000 years old and a strong future leader of this civilization, she is also played extremely naive to this exploration crew and is almost infantilized in her quest for more information about her own society. Her character design is also hypersexualized, which is a tale as old as time when it comes to Disney animating any woman of color, and she spends the entirety of the climax in crystal form, locked up in a safe, needing to be rescued by Milo. All of this setup of Kida as a strong warrior and leader gets wasted because the movie doesn't know what to do with her. And that's not all her fault, because I mentioned that the first act of this movie is fantastic. And it is. The first 40 minutes are fantastically paced and packed to the brim with storytelling goodies. The second we reach Atlantis, however, the cracks start to show. It starts off well enough with the movie showing that Atlantean language is based on a root dialect, and they actually can speak English, and French, and Latin, and Spanish, and all these other languages. Which, fine, I can totally get on board with that. It works a lot better than Pocahontas' whole listen with your heart thing. So the fact that we are given an explanation on how they know English, it's cute. I'm here for it. But we learn that the king has essentially forbidden knowledge of a lot of Atlantean culture and history to protect his people. He doesn't want the power that he used that caused Atlantis' destruction to be used again. So as a result, there's a lot of technologies that they can no longer access. And as a society, they can't even read their own written language anymore, the language that Milo can. While that explanation does give Milo some more importance and try to explain away the problematic white savior aspects of his character in this world, it doesn't really make sense that over 8,000 years, Kida and her people would lose the ability to read their own language, but maintain the ability to speak English, Latin, French, Spanish, languages that they are not using in their civilization. Milo and the crew are already the fish out of water in this world. Why do we need to also make Kida a fish out of water in her own world just for Milo to explain and teach her about her own culture? It's not horrible, it's just weird. And then we get to the fact that the movie and everyone involved doesn't actually know what the secret and culture of Atlantis is. We finally discover the power source, and it is this big energy crystal that chooses someone of royal descent to absorb them and use them in times of crisis to protect the city when it's under attack. Okay, so after the big turn happens and Rourke is taking over the city, we get this underground scene where the crystal calls to Kida. She walks on water towards it and turns to Milo and tells him in Atlantean to not worry, that everything will be okay. She gets pulled up and crystallizes, comes back down in full Emma Frost cosplay, and walks back to the crew to cut to her immediately being put in a safe and locked away. So, okay, like, what is happening here? What was the point of the transformation? Is Rourke's plan now to sell Kida as a crystal person to some foreign government? We don't know what she is, what the crystal is, what it does, anything at all. And worse than that, we have now taken out the main female heroine and completely silenced her. We've turned her into a literal statue that will have no agency for nearly the rest of the film. After saving her, Milo cracks open the safe. Also, someone help here? No? Nobody? Alright. And as soon as she's free, she uses her magic to turn on Atlantis, raise into the sky, and protect the city. Why couldn't this have happened when she first crystallized? Kida's mother happened immediately after being taken up. Why the delay here? Why can't she use these crystal powers? And this time, after saving the city, Kida is sent back down in human form, along with her bracelet from childhood that her mother took up with her on her crystal ascent 8,000 years ago. Why was Kida able to come back but not Kida's mother? Perhaps taking the city underwater and keeping it safe in the ocean took longer, and so Kida's mother couldn't be returned? Kida's father does mention that if Kida remains bonded to the crystal, she'll become lost in it, so there must be some time element at play here. We're also given hints that this energy source is a sentient being, so maybe it just decided that Kida should go back to live with the Atlanteans, because who knows? The movie does not tell us. I'm not saying that I need every magical thing in a movie explained to me and laid out in logical fashion. But what I am saying is that these decisions make the second half of the movie feeling a lot sloppier than the first. And it also really knocks down Kida as a capable and strong character. And another thing with this second half, we see the exploration crew and their inventory be absolutely decimated by the Leviathan fight. And we'll get to this fight in a sec. But they lose damn near everything after this, and are left with one mini submarine and one escape pod. From here we see that they have the big digging machine, a few trucks, and that's it. And after that, we get another set piece where we have their entire camp set aflame, trucks get blown up, and a bridge collapses, sending them down into an abyss. Vinny notes that he's got a few sticks of dynamite and some cherry bombs left, but it is well established that they are running on very few provisions here. So where does all this artillery come from? In the climax of the movie, we have guns to take over the city, the hot air balloon to try and escape, machine guns, anti-aircraft guns, cannons, warplanes. Vinny has more explosions. It's just like, where did all this come from? Again, it's not that it's terrible, and the guns are there because it makes for a better third act climax fight. We need to have action and explosions, so we have to have them. But it's notable because while the first half of the movie is incredibly well paced and nary a moment is wasted, the second half is super sloppy and full of holes and choices that make the movie feel a lot shakier. The movie was set up so fast and precise that its foundation is not this massive slab holding the movie up. It is a precise, thin bridge. And that second half of the movie is just so chaotic and wild that it cannot be supported by this thin little bridge that we have built. It needed a tight ending, and instead we kind of blew Pandora's box open, and the movie is really shaky as a result. Now, all that being said, the movie does still work for me. From this moment here where Audrey decides to abandon Rourke and causes all of the main crew to leave his side and stand with Milo, except Sweet, by the way, because Sweet had already defected because Sweet is the best, and I love Sweet. From that scene through the end, all the pieces fall into place for me. I buy that these characters have grown charmed by Milo and realize what they're doing is wrong. I buy that Rourke doesn't care, and that Helga would go along with him. Also here, Rourke throws out a line that I don't fully understand.
P.T. Barnum was right.
I was waiting for a follow-up to this line or for him to complete a sentence. I don't get it. Is he calling them a circus act? I haven't seen The Greatest Showman, so you P.T. Barnum historians need to fill me in here. What am I missing? What is this supposed to mean? I don't get it. This leads us to the king's death, with him entrusting the safety of Atlantis to Milo, and Sweet giving Milo a pep talk that causes him to chase down Rourke and fight to save Atlantis. Milo does a quick tutorial, and everyone can suddenly expertly use these Atlantean warships, which, by the way, why are all these ships here? We haven't used them for thousands of years, to the point people have forgotten what they even are, so why are so many conveniently lined up here at the city's entrance, ready to go into battle? Anyway, we have our fantastic climax that makes 0 sense on a logical level, but 100% sense on a character level. Everyone fighting against Rourke. Rourke being an absolute monster and betraying Helga, throwing her off the hot air balloon. She gets her moment to fight back like a badass before she is overpowered, and she uses her final dying breath to ensure Rourke can't get out. Rourke turns feral, like Ratigan in Great Mouse Detective, you'll love to see it, and breaks the cage Kida is kept in. Side note, why can't Kida activate herself here if all it takes is a crack in the safe? We'll go back to that. Milo cuts him with some of the glass that has been powered, I guess, by the Atlantean crystal, and Rourke's skin is covered in this horrifying blue crystal shards that immobilize him. He then comes back for one more scare, only to be absolutely torn apart in a very satisfying death scene. We get a great escape the lava sequence reminiscent of the Cave of Wonder scene in Aladdin, and Milo frees Kida, causing her to save the city. See, right there. He broke the safe open, and as soon as there was a crack, she could break out. Why couldn't she do that before? Why did she get into the safe in the first place? Oh well, who knows, who cares. Atlantis is saved, the crew is sent back to the surface with Atlantean crystals and gold, and they tell Whitmore that Milo went down with the ship, thus covering his story, and Milo stays behind to live his life in Atlantis with Kida. The end. It's sloppy. I can't deny that. I can't answer the questions that this movie just flings at us in the back half. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't care. Atlantis is such an exceptional piece of work from Disney in terms of its scale and the risks it took. It really took massive swings, and sure, not all of them hit, but the end result is still something to be celebrated. This movie has some of the best visuals in any Disney movie I've seen. The Leviathan scene and both cataclysmic events at Atlantis look gorgeous, and the final fight scene is a great spectacle of explosions, gunfire, and magical blue lasers. I love how mature this story is, and the themes it tackles. It is unquestionably firm on the stance it takes against our villains, who are some of the most realistic portrayals of real-life villains I've seen in a Disney movie. Its treatment of death is noteworthy too. If you've seen my video on Strange World, you'll remember I called out this moment. They are then immediately attacked by some creatures, where a member of the crew gets murdered, by the way. This is never brought up again. He gets murdered and pulled right out of the plane. And I bemoaned how it's never brought up again or addressed in the movie. In Atlantis, so many people die, and in extremely tragic ways too. Sure, we've got our ships being exploded from the Leviathan attack, and we know that they die, but we also actually see people die. This truck driver, before his truck explodes, these citizens of Atlantis who weren't able to make it back into the city in time and are left outside the force field for the flood to hit them, Rourke and Helga's death, the king of Atlantis, and this blink and you'll miss it moment where Audrey rushed to close the door on the sinking sub as people scramble to safety. 2 people make it, but this one guy gets locked out to drown because there's just no time and not everyone can be saved. It all happened so fast and it's super dark and shocked me. And you know how this movie responds? By addressing the deaths. We have a memorial and a moment of silence as Rourke and the crew bemoan their fallen comrades. And this moment right here is so important because it really sells us the gravitas of this expedition and what has happened. Nothing even close to this happens in Strange World. And sure, we come out of this scene with some humor to get us moving forward, but addressing the darkness and grief that these characters are experiencing is very noteworthy and another thing I love about this movie. The cast of characters and their relationship to each other make up one of my favorite ensembles in a Disney movie since Robin Hood. Really, the only thing I can bemoan here in this movie is the script. And yes, that is a massive part of a movie, but what can I say but that on a personal and emotional level, this movie succeeds in spite of its script problems. Maybe you won't feel the same. Maybe you'll be pulled out of the movie by all these plot holes, or maybe you won't be able to turn off your brain when these questions arise. But I could. And I was able to enjoy the spectacle and the emotional ride that this took me on. And I'm very grateful for that because I love Atlantis. Also, I see a lot of people these days regarding it as a cult classic and wondering, how could Atlantis have failed? And y'all, it's not that hard to figure out. The movie, unfortunately, was never going to be a huge success. It came out as an animated Disney movie, but made for a more adult crowd, and its competition was Shrek in the theaters. It loses right there. Shrek was a phenomenon. No one was going to see any other animated movie. Shrek was king of 2001. On the live action side, if we're targeting the teen audiences, we had Lara Croft Tomb Raider and Fast and the Furious. The movie just had so much competition stacked against it that it was never going to succeed in the year that it got released. And it's a shame because Atlantis came out at a really rocky period of Disney history after the Renaissance where they weren't having a lot of financial successes, and Atlantis, along with a couple of other movies released real close to it, really signaled the death of traditional 2D animation for Disney, which is huge. I think if released today, the movie would have a much warmer reception, but even if that's not the case, I'm glad people now are discovering it and going back and finding out how much Atlantis has to offer. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it succeeds on a different level that works just as well. I'm not here at Atlantis for a perfect story, I'm here for the vibes, and Atlantis has vibes in spades. I'm gonna rank Atlantis 4th on my list, above Strange World and Fox and the Hound, and just before Emperor's New Groove. I think that's a really comfortable place for it. I really loved it. And with that, Happy New Year, everybody! I hope you all had an amazing 2024, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this channel goes in 2025. I'm currently at 76 subscribers, which is super exciting, and I'm trying to hit 100 as my next goal. So if you haven't done it yet, make sure to subscribe and like this video, and comment below what you thought about Atlantis. Not only do comments help show YouTube that you all actually like the video, but I do read and respond to all the comments, so I'd love to have a chat with you all about this movie. It's really divisive. It failed on launch, but I know a lot of you love it, so let's talk about it. Why do we love Atlantis so much? What are your favorite parts? I've also made a Discord linked in the description below and on my profile if you want to follow along this Disney movie club and just chat, not on a video, about what games we're playing, what movies we're watching, what's the next Disney movies coming up, and just general video ideas. Also, for my 100 subscribers, I want to do a special celebration. I'm not sure what that is yet, but because we're such a small community, I really wanted to ask you. If you are here watching this video, and I know this was a long one, so if you made it here, I want to hear from you. Let me know, what should I do for the 100th celebration? Should it be a special video? Do you want a ranking video? Should we do a stream? Do you want Kingdom Hearts? Love Kingdom Hearts. Just want to have a good time to celebrate this milestone, and thank you all for subscribing. So let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know on the Discord, wherever you want. Thanks so much. I hope you have a great holiday and get some time to rest and spend time with loved ones. And I'll see you in the new year for the next one.